All right, you may be seated again as we are going to be reading through Mark. These readings are going to be longer and longer, so I'll let you sit for the reading of the gospel. But just as a reminder, the reason why we stand up generally to listen to the gospel is because it's the story of God who gave his body for us. And so we respond with our bodies by standing up and giving honor to that story. So maybe give honor with your body and your mind for today as we hear this story from Mark 1:21 through 45. They came at last to the village of Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee, and on the Sabbath day, Jesus went straight into a synagogue, sat down, and began to teach. The people looked at each other, amazed, because this strange teacher acted as one authorized by God, and what he taught affected them in ways their own scribes' teaching could not. Just then, a man in the gathering was overcome by an unclean spirit, shouted, "What are you doing here, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I can see who you are. You're the Holy One of God." And Jesus, rebuking him, said, "Be quiet. Come out of him now." The man's body began to shake and shudder, and then, howling, the spirit flew out of the man. The people couldn't stop talking about what they had seen. "Who is this Jesus?" they said. "This is a new teaching, and it has such authority. Even unclean spirits obey his commands." It wasn't long before news spread all over the whole countryside of Galilee. Right after they left the synagogue, Jesus went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. They told him about Simon's mother-in-law, who was there in bed, sick and feverish. Jesus went to her bedside, took her hand, and lifted her up. As soon as he touched her, the fever left her, and she felt well again, strong enough to bustle around the house, taking care of her new visitors. Just before night fell, others had gathered all the sick, diseased, and demon-infested people they could find. It seemed as if the whole town had gathered at Simon and Andrew's door. Jesus was kept busy healing people of every sort of ailment and casting out unclean spirits. He was very careful not to let the demons speak because they knew him, and they could reveal to the people who he really was. Early in the morning, Jesus got up, left the house while it was still dark outside, and went to a deserted place to pray. Simon and the others traveling with Jesus looked for him. They finally tracked him down. "Everybody wants to know where you are." "It's time we went somewhere else, the next village maybe, so I can tell more people the good news about the kingdom of God. After all, that's the reason I'm here." So he traveled to the next village and the one after that, and throughout the region of Galilee, teaching in the synagogues and casting out unclean spirits. And a leper walked right up to Jesus, dropped to his knees, begged him for help. "If you want to, you can make me clean." Jesus was powerfully moved, reached out, and actually touched the leper. "I do want to. Be clean," he said. And at that very moment, the disease left him. The leper was cleansed and made whole once again. Jesus sent him away, but first, he warned him strongly, "Don't tell anybody how this happened. Just go and show yourself to the priest so that he can verify you're clean, perform the ceremony prescribed by Moses as proof of your cleansing, and then return home." The man talked everywhere about how Jesus had healed him, until Jesus could no longer come into a town openly without the risk of being mobbed. So he remained on the outskirts. Even so, people sought him out from far and wide. This is the gospel of the Lord. So there's two things I just want to lift up in this story. One is the story of healing, and not just the various healings that happen, but they focus in on one of them, this healing of the leper. So I want to focus in on that story, but I also want to focus on this moment of Jesus taking a pause right in the middle, just sneaking away in the middle of the night just to get a quick breath, just to get a little bit of silence. They're both really important sermons, and I don't want to give you two full sermons, so I'll try and bring the two together somehow. But let's start with the leper healing. There's something really powerful about this. It starts with the leper coming forward, and it says that Jesus was powerfully moved. I really like that translation because the Greek is a little ambiguous, and even there's different translations out there, so you might be able to take it differently. On one side, you might translate it that Jesus saw the leper and took compassion on him. And on the other side, it might mean that Jesus saw the leper and was mad about the system of injustice that had put this person as somebody who was unworthy to be a part of community. And so there was this righteous indignation. And so Jesus says, don't worry, you are made well. Kind of out of this place of just being angry at the system of oppression. And I think they're both good. You can't have one without the other. And so let's talk about compassion first, right? That Jesus had compassion, saw this person who had come forward to him, and somebody who had probably been left on the outskirts of society, who maybe grew up and had a family, but then got sick. And just because they were sick, they couldn't come to the family meetings anymore. No more family Christmases, no more Thanksgivings, no more Hanukkah, no more getting together for New Year's, no more getting together for the Sabbath, no more community meals. They were just left alone, just completely left alone. And why? Just because they got sick? And so Jesus saw this person and was moved, was just, how could this possibly happen to you? And just felt bad. And so was moved with compassion to do what he could about it and heal the person. And sometimes we need to be moved that way too. We need to have eyes that are open enough to see the hurt that people are experiencing out in the world. There are many types of hurts that are out there, many types of people who are held at an arm's distance for many and various reasons, and we need to open up our eyes and see their situation and feel a little bit of their hurt and be moved with compassion towards them to maybe even touch them. To touch the life of someone else, to be moved with compassion. But it doesn't just stop there, because really, compassion can be kind of easy, like charity. It's easy once a year, we get together and we put some things in boxes and we deliver them out to people, and that's nice. It's good, don't get me wrong, but that's not enough. That's simple compassion. That's just charity, and charity doesn't really solve the big problem. What also needs to happen is this other part of kind of righteous indignation, getting mad at the whole system. Jesus looks at this person and is like, wait a minute, how dare this group of people ostracize somebody just because they're sick? They don't get to go to the family gatherings anymore. They get put aside. They don't get food. They don't get water. They don't get shelter. They get put all the way on the outside of the city just because they got sick. This is unjust, and Jesus is mad. And Jesus wants to do something about it. So there's a big thing here in Jesus, not just saying you've been made well, but reaching out and touching the leper, right? The reason you gasped, because, leprosy was seen as something that not only made that person unclean, which unclean meant that your relationship with God was wrong, that your relationship with God was corrupted, and that, that's why they kept you away, because that was also infectious. I didn't want to mess up my relationship with God just because of you, so let's kick you out of town. And so Jesus says, no, this person's relationship with God is fine. They are a good person. They are worthy of God's love. They are worthy of everything the community has to offer them, so much so that I'm willing to put my life on the line. So Jesus, for the first time, puts his life on the line, says, I'm willing to go out on this line and say, I'm going to embrace you as my brother, whether these people like it or not. And maybe that makes me unclean. Maybe that makes people gasp. Maybe that makes people think of me less, but I'm going to do it because justice is important. And then doesn't just stop there. It says, now that I've done it, go to church and talk to your pastor. And make sure that they bring you back into community too, because I'm here to fix the whole system, not just to treat one person nicely, but I want to change the whole system, because this whole thing is broken, because sometimes we take people and we just put them in a corner and forget about them. Jesus says, no, this person belongs right in the middle of the whole family, deserves to get together with people who love them, deserves to get together and deserves a seat at the banquet table. They deserve to have Christmas is, with trees and with presents and with joy. They don't deserve to just be cast out aside just because they have some sort of mental illness or just because they, I don't know, decided that they love somebody of the same sex as themselves, or maybe because they decided to move to this country from somewhere else and they don't speak the language well yet, or because of whatever you want to insert here, whatever keeps people that step away from you. Jesus says, no, we need to heal this whole broken system. So the healing's not just about making this one person feel better, but that powerfully moved word means that I'm going to be so moved that I want to do something about the whole system, change this whole thing that keeps some people down and lifts others up just because of the color of their skin, because of where they were born, how much money they have, who did they decide to love, what mental illness they might have. Jesus says no. But that work can be exhausting. And that's the kind of work that Jesus is in. Jesus is in that work day in and day out, people coming in and is powerfully moved again and again and again. And that'll wear you down. It will. And so at some point, you have to stop. And you got to take a breath. And that's okay too. That even in the midst of this really important work that we have to get after together as God's people, you got to take a moment to, I just need a break. Even Jesus, right? The Son of God snuck away in the middle of the night. Just please, I need a moment by myself. Snuck away to a place that was deserted. Took a time to pray, say, okay, God, I'm doing this work. It's really important, but I'm tired, I'm beat. I just need a moment to myself. And it's interesting that Jesus was really busy, right? Healing people, and it doesn't talk about the bigger impact. Jesus wasn't powerfully moved until he took that moment to stop and breathe and rest, because sometimes you just get caught up in the busyness of it. You just get caught up in the busyness of life and the busyness of doing good and the busyness of doing charity, and you lose the ability to see the bigger picture, so that righteous indignation, the being powerfully moved, doesn't happen until after he takes a moment to rest, until he takes a pause, till he remembers who he is, till he remembers who God is, to remember what this is really all about. And then the leper comes to him and he's powerfully moved to do something in the world. So that's why we get together here, to hopefully press pause on life just for an hour and a half, 2 maybe, and to just take that deep breath. Okay, God, remember who we are, remember who God is, and then get back out there to do the work of turning the world upside down, of doing the work of spreading the good news that there is a place at the table for every single person, no matter what barrier you might put between yourself and others. We get together to at least take a deep breath once a week and get back out there to do the important work of turning this world around. Get a little bit of righteous indignation in your life and start making some changes in the world. Amen.